Hey everyone, Micah Phillips here. Thank you so much for joining me again. It's been a little while since I've done this, and I apologize for my absence, but I hope you've been doing well during your quarantine. And we are, for some of us, our states are sort of opening back up their businesses and restaurants. I hope some of you have been able to get out, maybe get to the barber shop and get a haircut. I'm sure some of you could use one. I could definitely use one. Look how long my hair has gotten. But anyway, hope you're doing well. We've been doing the series 14 Days of Interesting Instruments. And honestly, I've pretty much run out of instruments. I do have more, but I'm so bad at playing them that I'm not even going to attempt it. But I am working with some friends, doing some videos to try to get them playing their instruments. But you don't want to hear me play the violin. I don't want to hear me play the violin or the harp. We have a harp. I can't play the harp. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me. Again, the only thing I ask is, as always, if you like this video, please share it with your friends as well. I would love you to share it on Facebook. So today we're going to talk about something completely different. And when I say this word, I'm going to write it on my board. You might think, oh, that is the most boring thing I've ever heard of. But I think it's pretty exciting and very interesting. So I'm going to write this long word up on my board. I hope you can see it. I need to get a little more high tech than my whiteboard, but it works so far. Can you see this word? I hope so. Memorization. Does that sound boring to you? It might make you think of third grade when you had to learn a poem about the ocean or something. Maybe it was hard. Maybe it's hard for you to learn how to memorize something, but I'm going to erase the end of this word. And as you can tell, memorization sounds like another word, and that word is memory. All memorization is learning something so well that you don't have to watch it and you don't have to read it off of a page. You know it in your brain. You know it so well. You know, we say you know it by heart. So ask your parents. I bet they have a lot of songs that they memorized. Maybe they have a favorite band. I bet they love the song Don't Stop Believing by Journey. I bet they know all the words. I bet they know the music. Well, they memorized it. So there's a lot of different things you can memorize. One would be songs. Another would be maybe a famous speech. There's the Emancipation Proclamation. There's the I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King Jr. Winston Churchill has made some very notable speeches that are worth memorizing. But the thing that people memorize the most, I think, would be poems. And I was thinking about memorization, and when I was in high school, which is about 25, 26 years ago, every year my teacher would make us memorize a poem. And I still remember one of those poems, and I'm going to share that with you now. It's by a fellow named Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. That's a really cool name. He wrote a poem. It goes like this. I'm going to tell it to you from my memory. It's called a recitation. I'm going to recite it. It goes like this. The day is cold and dark and dreary. It rains and the wind is never weary. The vine still clings to the moldering wall, and at every gust the dead leaves fall, and the day is dark and dreary. My life is cold and dark and dreary. It rains and the wind is never weary. My mind still clings to the moldering past, while the hopes of youth fall thick in the blast, and my life is dark and dreary. Be still, sad heart, and cease repining. Behind the clouds is the sun still shining. Thy fate is the common fate of all. Into each life some rain must fall. Some days must be dark and dreary. Do you like that? So that's about comparing our lives to the weather, right? So it's springtime, we have a lot of beautiful days, but then every once in a while it's got to rain to water the flowers and the grass. And so not every day is going to be bright and sunny. And the same is true in our lives. Not every day is great. I mean, we have bad days every once in a while, but be encouraged because the sun is still shining behind the clouds. You just can't see it, but hope is on the way. So that's a poem I memorized about 26, 27 years ago. It's still stuck in my head. Let's see. Some poems and books can be very funny and almost nonsensical. A lot of you love Dr. Seuss. I love Dr. Seuss. Like, he made up all these crazy words that didn't even exist. And I recently, last year, memorized a poem that has a lot of nonsense words. The author just made it up. And it's Lewis Carroll was the author. And you will probably know his book about Alice in Wonderland. This comes from the book after that. And the poem is called Jabberwocky. You ever heard of Jabberwocky? I love that poem. It's full of words that make no sense at all. And I love it. So let's see if you know any of these words or a lot of these words. I don't. So this is Jabberwocky. It's about an older man who wants a younger man to go kill a monster named the Jabberwocky. Okay. So it goes like this. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the momraths outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite and the claws that catch. Beware the Jubjub bird, and shun the frumious Bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the manxome foe he sought. So rested he by the Tumtum tree, and stood a while in thought. And as in uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock with eyes of flame came whiffling through the tulgey wood, and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through the vorpal blade went snicker snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. O frabjous day, Callooh Callay, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the momraths outgrabe. So the young man found the Jabberwocky, and he cut its head off and took it back to the old man. It's kind of gross, but I love it. He says, oh, frabjous day. We say that sometimes around our house when something good happens. It's a frabjous day. The word doesn't exist in real life, but it's fun to say. So what else can we memorize? I started memorizing a couple years ago something that might gross you out completely. I memorized some love poems for my wife. I didn't really know any love poems. I had memorized maybe a passage from Romeo and Juliet from Shakespeare. But I decided to learn a couple love poems to recite to my wife, and I did it very poorly the first time. It was funny. But I've learned them better now. I'm going to share one with you. Maybe someday you'll grow up and want to share it with your boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife. It is called Song to Celia by Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson lived the same time as Shakespeare, and he actually criticized Shakespeare. He's like, Shakespeare is not that good. Turns out nobody really knows who Ben Jonson is. But he had one famous poem I'll share with you now. It's called Song to Celia. It goes like this. Drink to me only with thine eyes, and I will pledge with mine. Or leave a kiss but in the cup, and I'll not look for wine. The thirst that from the soul doth rise doth ask a drink divine. Yet might I of Jove's nectar sup, I would not change for thine. I sent thee late a rosy wreath, not so much honouring thee as giving it a hope, that there it could not withered be. But thou thereon didst only breathe, and sent'st it back to me, since when it grows and smells, I swear, not of itself, but thee. You might think that's kind of icky, but when I recite it to my wife, she seems to like it, or at least she pretends to. So I've got one more I want to share with you. This is a long one, okay? A couple years ago, I realized that it had been about 25 years since I memorized something, right? Because we adults, unless we challenge ourselves to do this in our everyday life, we don't really have to memorize anything. Because we have everything on computer and, written down in books. So I was like, I don't even know if my brain will still remember things that are that hard and challenging. So I was like, I'm going to start doing this and working on it. And it's a poem called The Lady of Shalott. Now, a lot of you will know King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. You've probably read some books about them. Sir Lancelot, Lady Guinevere, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. and Camelot, Merlin. Camelot's the place where this happened. Well, in the middle of the 1800s, there was an author named Alfred Lord Tennyson, and he created a new character just out of nowhere. Can you imagine that? So he takes this big legend, the Knights of the Round Table and Camelot, and he just makes up a new character that no one had ever heard of, and there were no legends about her. But he wrote in this new character called the Lady of Shalott. And in 1832, he wrote a long poem about her. But the funny thing is, 10 years later, he redid the whole thing, and it still had the same kind of meaning, but totally different words, right? So that's kind of strange. I have memorized the second one from 1842, and it's called The Lady of Shalott. I'll explain it a little bit here, and then I'll finish it out in the poem, see if you can understand it, because some of the language is not very easy to follow. But there's this island in the river. The river flows down to Camelot. In the middle of it, there's this island. There's a castle, and there's a lady that lives there all by herself, named the Lady of Shalott. And she doesn't know why, but she knows that if she looks out the window to Camelot, that a curse will come upon her. And you'll hear it in the poem. She doesn't know what the curse is. She just knows she'll be in trouble. And so she sets up a mirror that she looks in the mirror to see out the window so that she's not looking directly out. And one day there is a temptation for her to look out the window. And we're going to find out if she does or not. And we'll talk about it at the end. I'll kind of make sure you understand the very end as well. But here it goes. I may mess up on this. I've tried this several times. So bear with me. If I stumble through it a little bit, I'll try my best. It's very long. It takes about 8 minutes to recite. It's 19 stanzas. So I hope you like it. This is The Lady of Shalott by Alfred Lord Tennyson. On either side the river lie long fields of barley and of rye that clothe the wold and meet the sky, and through the field the road runs by to many-towered Camelot. And up and down the people go, gazing where the lilies blow round an island there below, the island of Shalott. Willows whiten, aspens quiver, little breezes dusk and shiver through the wave that runs forever by the island in the river, flowing down to Camelot. 4 grey walls and 4 grey towers overlook a space of flowers, and the silent isle embowers the Lady of Shalott. By the margin willow veiled slide the heavy barges trailed by slow horses, and unhailed the shallop flitted silken sailed, skimming down to Camelot. But who hath seen her wave her hand, or at the casement seen her stand, or is she known in all the land, the Lady of Shalott? Only reapers reaping early in among the bearded barley hear a song that echoes cheerly from the river winding clearly down to towered Camelot. And by the moon the reaper weary, piling sheaves in uplands airy, listening whispers, "'Tis the fairy Lady of Shalott." There she weaves by night and day a magic web with colors gay. She has heard a whisper say a curse is on her if she stay to look down on Camelot. She knows not what the curse may be, and so she weaveth steadily, and little other care hath she, the Lady of Shalott. And moving through a mirror clear that hangs before her all the year, shadows of the world appear. There she sees the highway near winding down to Camelot. There the river eddy whirls, and there the surly village churls, and the red cloaks of market girls pass onward from Shalott. Sometimes a troop of damsels glad, an abbot on an ambling pad. Sometimes a curly shepherd lad or long-haired page in crimson clad goes by to tower Camelot. And sometimes through the mirror blue the knights come riding 2 and 2. She hath no loyal knight and true, the Lady of Shalott. But in her web she still delights to weave the mirror's magic sights, for often through the silent nights a funeral with plumes and lights and music went to Camelot. Or when the moon was overhead came 2 young lovers lately wed. I am half sick of shadows, said the Lady of Shalott. This is where she starts to get in trouble here. A bowshot from her bower eaves, he rode between the barley sheaves. The sun came dazzling through the leaves and flamed upon the brazen greaves of bold Sir Lancelot. A red-crossed knight forever kneeled to a lady in his shield that sparkled on the yellow field beside remote Shalott. The gemmy bridle glittered free like the sun branch of stars we see hung in the golden galaxy. The bridle bells rang merrily as he rode down to Camelot, and from his brazen baldric slung a mighty silver bugle hung, and as he rode his armor rung beside remote Shalott. All in the blue unclouded weather, thick jeweled shone the saddle leather, the helmet and the helmet feather burned like one burning flame together as he rode down to Camelot. As often through the purple night, below the starry clusters bright, some bearded meteor, trailing light, moves over still Shalott. His broad clear brow in sunlight glowed, on burnished hooves his warhorse trode, from underneath his helmet flowed his coal-black curls as on he rode down to Camelot. From the bank and from the river he flashed into the crystal mirror. Tira lira, by the river, sang Sir Lancelot. She left the web, she left the loom, she made 3 paces through the room. She saw the water lily bloom, she saw the helmet and the plume. She looked down to Camelot. Out flew the web and floated wide, the mirror cracked from side to side. The curse has come upon me, cried the Lady of Shalott. So here's what happened next. She knows she's in trouble. The curse is on her. In the stormy east wind straining, the pale yellow woods were waning. The broad stream and his banks complaining, heavily the low sky raining overtowered Camelot. Down she came and found a boat beneath the willow left afloat, and round about the prow she wrote, the Lady of Shalott. And down the river's dim expanse, like some bold seer in a trance, seeing all his own mischance, with a glassy countenance did she look to Camelot. And at the closing of the day she loosed the chain, and down she lay. The broad stream bore her far away, the Lady of Shalott. Lying robed in snowy white, that loosely flew to left and right, the leaves upon her falling light, through the noises of the night she floated down to Camelot. And as the boat had wound along, the willowy hills and fields among, they heard her singing her last song, the Lady of Shalott. Heard a carol, mournful, holy, chanted loudly, chanted lowly, till her blood was frozen slowly, and her eyes were darkened wholly, turned to towered Camelot. For ere she reached upon the tide, the first house by the waterside, singing in her song, she died, the Lady of Shalott. Under tower and balcony, by garden wall and gallery, a gleaming shape she floated by, dead pale between the houses high, silent into Camelot. Out upon the wharfs they came, knight and burgher, lord and dame, and round the prow they read her name, the Lady of Shalott. Who is this, and what is here? And in the lighted palace near died the sound of royal cheer. And they crossed themselves for fear, all the knights at Camelot. But Lancelot mused a little space. He said, she has a lovely face. God in his mercy lend her grace, the Lady of Shalott. So that's the end. Did you understand what happened? So she looked out the window at Camelot, and everything, the mirror cracked, the web flew out the window, and she knew the curse was on her. So she went down and found a boat and started floating down the river to Camelot. And she came in and she died while she was singing, floating into Camelot. So kind of strange of Alfred Lord Tennyson. He writes this poem, he creates this character, this lovely woman in a castle, and then at the end, she dies. Kind of sad. Anyway, I guess if you write a poem, you can do whatever you want. So I am curious about your memory. Have you ever learned any poems, any speeches, any songs, any music? I would love to hear about it. I'm curious what the longest thing you've ever memorized is. So feel free to comment. Love to hear what you memorized. And that is all. I'm working on some other videos, like I said, with my friends to share with you. I think you're going to find those to be very interesting. But I hope you're doing well, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.